Scott.
Ville, how are you?
I'm pretty darn good, to be honest with you. Tired, but happy. It was a long day. Been rehearsing with the band for the forthcoming tour and singing my butt off for hours and hours on end. So,
you know what? I definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, cool, lovely. Hope you get the chance to see one of the gigs either in North America, or then we're trying to make it over to Canada as well. Yeah, we're working on that. At least hoping for Vancouver and Toronto. So, we're working our butts off to make it happen later on in 2023.
Let's talk about Neon Noir, though, man. You've called the effort a teary mascara marathon between Robert Smith and Ozzy. Is that something you still stand by?
Yeah, well, in other words, I think musically my sort of like safe place, or my safe zone, or whatever you want to call it, is somewhere between Black Sabbath and Depeche Mode.
Cool.
Which is quite similar to that, the mascara marathon. So I still love the melancholy 80s pop music and coming together with a bit more harder edged stuff, usually originally heavily influenced by Black Sabbath.
Is it an album that you find that him fans will find familiar in its sound, or is it something completely new?
Well, I think there's a lot more similarities with him than there are dissimilarities, and it wasn't intentional per se. It's just I picked up the guitar and started strumming and humming, and after 2.5 years and COVID, I had the album in my hands. So it wasn't really premeditated. I wasn't really thinking about it. I feel the album is a continuation of where we left off with him, as opposed to me trying to do a full 180 and sort of like disown my past or burn my bridges. I wrote 95% of all the hymn songs, and I grew up with the guys, and it's such an important part of my life that there's way more love towards the time I had with him than hate. And to me, it just feels logical. Same thing regarding touring. There's going to be a lot of hymn songs we're going to be playing, and it just, for me, it makes all the sense in the world. It's like I've been sort of like half jokingly calling it that him were the Hobbit to VV's Lord of the Rings. Same author, comes from the same world, more or less. Some same characters as well, but hopefully there's a few twists and turns that are unexpected and fresh.
Tell me about the single Loveletting. What can you tell me about that one?
It was a weird song in a way that was probably, I think it was really early 2021 when I worked on that song. And that was the time when, we knew in 2020 that, okay, the whole summer will be canceled and all the lockdowns were happening and nothing's going on. And it was like a test of patience for the whole humanity. Right. And then early 2021, it seemed that there's no end to it. We were kind of like we're holding our breath and hoping that life will continue to be a bit more normal in 2021. And then poop hit the fan, and all of a sudden, it was just terribly dark for that wee bit. And I remember working on that song then, and that's probably one of the reasons it has a sort of, how would I put it? It's quite tender at times. Mm. It's quite sweet in the verses, and it's actually quite a weird song for me because it has like the verses are very folk, very Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young coming together with something. The pre-choruses are very 80s and very goth, and the choruses themselves are pretty hymn. And then there's the midsection that's very, very goth and 80s, so like goth sing-along thing. And it's just like always. My perspective on the song is so very different from somebody like yourself. It's hard for me to understand what might be interesting about the song. I remember how it was written and when it was written, and the whole. For me, the lyric is about the sort of trying to figure out when to hold on and when to let go. That's always, I think, in life regarding everything, relationships and everything you might come across. That's always the hard question.
I can imagine it would be as well, because it's a piece of art and the way it's taken and absorbed by other people, right? Another song I wanted to bring up to you because of the way that I experienced it was the song "The Forever Lost." Where did that come from? Just as an inspiration for you?
That was the last song I wrote for the album. I guess that it makes all the sense in the world for. I think the second last song was "Heart Full of Ghosts." Okay. Which is really moody and quite long. And I think it was sort of like the Forever Lost is the full stop for the album. I knew that I don't need another song, and I just thought that I had that idea. It's a weird song. I think a lot of times an artist or a musician, there's some sort of pressure when you're let's say halfway through creating an album. You know that you need to get it finished and blah 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 blah. And then when you have it finished, then the amount of relief actually creates really good new music right afterwards. Right. It's happened for him a lot of times. There was a song called "The Funeral of Hearts" that wasn't supposed to be on the album at all. I wrote it after the album was done, more or less, and we realized that it's such a good track that let's put it on the album. And it's happened several times. So I think the "Forever Lost" is a similar song in that there's a sense of ease, even though it's a fast rocker and it's not the happiest track in the world, but there's this sort of melancholy levity about it. It's and it's super 80s as well. It's very, very 80s. And I think it might have been also that because the album was done, I could just let go of any of my inhibitions and just go crazy. Because I knew I had the bulk of the work done already. So if I would mess up the Forever Lost completely, I wouldn't have to release it. You know what I mean? And when the pressure is off, when the pressure is off, that's usually when you come up with the goods. That's the best time for. It's a fun song for me, and it's probably the most goth, like straight on goth rock I've ever done. It's quite Sisters of Mercy at times.
It is very Sisters of Mercy, yes.
there's a bit of a Rammstein in there, and there's a lot of. I had a lot of fun with that song, and then also the lyrics are quite weird. There's I mentioned the Nyctophile Shangri-La, which for me means this the sort of like paradise for the people who love the dark. Obviously, I mean Helsinki by that. Because so is the winters are super, super dark and long. The sun doesn't come up at all. So it's and there's the mention of Finnish roulettes as opposed to Russian roulettes. There's playfulness, I think, on the whole album. I think I take music seriously, but the process can still be fun. It can still have a sense of enjoyment about it, and that's a fine line. That it doesn't become too ha-ha.
Yeah, of course. Who produced the album?
I did. It's a funny thing. I started working on the first song. The first song was "Runaway from the Sun," and I started working on that late 2019. And I originally thought that I'd be working on demos. I'd be looking for a band for whatever might happen next. But then I produced it, engineered it, and played everything on it, and realized that it's pretty darn good. And since I was a huge fan of Prince, I thought that I gotta get my Prince fixation going and do this whole thing completely solo. And that is what ended up happening with the whole album. So I played all the drums and the guitars and the basses and synths and wrote everything, engineered, aka recorded everything at my own place here in Helsinki. And the album was mixed by Tim Palmer, who's an Englishman who lives in Austin, Texas. I met him back in 2002 when he mixed Love Metal for him. And he produced a few albums. He did Dark Lights, produced and mixed for him, and we became really good friends. And I definitely needed somebody who could see the forest for the trees. So I asked him to help me out. And I'm not a mixing engineer, and that's not something I will never be. So he worked as a co-producer and a mixing engineer. He's sort of like he could see the big picture a bit better than I was because I was so involved in the nitty-gritty of it all. But it was a cool experience because I've never done anything like that before. That's the reason why it took such a long time. But then again, that was the only way I could have done it because of the pandemic. Yep. I wouldn't have been able to anyway play with, outside musicians more, really. So it ended up making all the sense in the world to really just lose myself in the music and not to compromise one iota and really go for the sort of like undiluted, for better or for worse. Sort of vision.
Taking it back to him, was the breakup or the dissolution of him strictly based on creativity, or was there other things involved?
I think it was just that we were a bit worn out, or we lost the spark, however way you want to. It seemed that, we all loved touring, but the spark wasn't there when we started working on new material. It's just, we didn't think it sounded great. And when you've been with the band for such a long time, and we considered that what we had done, great things, at least great things for ourselves, things that we really enjoyed and things that really made a difference for ourselves. It was quite sad to all of a sudden realize that the new stuff is not up to par. and it just doesn't feel right. And it took a while for us to actually make that call to be able to say that, yeah, let's be done with it, because it had been such a big part of everybody's life. And since we were kids, I knew the guitar player and the bass player, Miggy and Linde. I knew them since I was maybe 10 years old or so. So we literally grew up together with having him as the sort of like the soundtrack and the backbone for our lives. So, so it was sad, but then yet at the same time, I'm quite proud of the fact that we ended on good terms, because that's quite rare in the world of music.
How much of the follow-up to Tears on Tape had been completed? Were there songs that were done?
Well, we never went into the studio proper, so we never booked any. So we were talking about it, but there was all sorts of hassle. Like Gas, the drummer, left the band because he had some troubles with his hands originally, and then he did a tour with us, and then I don't know what happened with him. He just jumped ship at some point, and then we found another guy who was a great drummer, and we did some touring. We went to South America for the first time, and went to China as well, nice. and he's the guy who ended up playing on the farewell tour. But no, it seemed that we had lost interest, as simple as it is. Mm-hmm. I think that we just we come to the end of that journey. It felt that we played all the songs we were made to play, and so it was quite simple. But yeah, it was quite dark for a wee bit, because it was hard. So like the brain didn't compute. I didn't kind of like. It was weird. And also it was quite scary, because I didn't know what's going to happen. Neither did the rest of the guys, how it's going to feel after the band is done with. Because I thought that it might be that I feel like a completely different person, or I feel that I've just lost a leg, or, that there's going to be a lot of phantom pain. Right. But there was none. There was just a great wave of relief, to be honest with you. And it felt really good.
Well, and it sounds like the way that it ended was a very positive way. What you had said is it's kind of a rare thing. Does that leave the doors even slightly open that him may at some point return?
It'd be lovely to play with some of the lads, especially Miggy, the bass player. He's one of the guys who also was here to at my home studio to listen to the when Noir was born. Every couple of months he came over to listen to where I was at with the album, and he was my Rick Rubin. Cool. This guru who didn't say much, but whose opinions anyway mattered the most. He's a lovely chap and a really, really good friend. So I'm glad that he helped me out once again to sort of like get myself out of this hole. I always dig myself, for myself, on a repeat basis. But yeah, I think that I never say never. Definitely. If there's good reason and if there's good timing, whenever, it'd be great. They're great musicians. They're great guys. We shared a lot of good things, both on a personal level and a musical level. But at this moment in time, none whatsoever. I'm not interested at all, because it doesn't make any sense. We did what we did. It's only been a few years since we disbanded. We did the farewell
2017,
tour. Yeah. Pardon me?
2017, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only getting close to 6 years now. Yeah. So it hasn't been long, and I think that there's also the sort of like danger of rehashing something and messing it up royally, because as discussed, we ended up, it ended on a high note. Yeah. So that's quite nice, and at the end of the day, we did end the band for a good reason. It's just. It was quite painful to be in a being with a band that you love to death, and at the same time realize that you're not really, that things are not working out, and no matter what you do, it's not just, the love is not there anymore. So I'd be very wary of trying to reanimate that, because it might end up being that sort of Frankenstein monster that nobody wants to really meet.
Understood. But about getting into some of your youth, I mean, what was it about Kiss's Animalize album that affected you so much as a youth?
I think, that was back in the 80s. That was
great album, man. I love that album.
I think the biggest deal was the availability. Finland is such a small country and right between Sweden and Russia. But back in the 80s, not a lot of bands toured here. It wasn't like these days, the world it's such a global place, Sure. But back in the day, the only bands that really toured were usually metal or hard rock bands, and it was Iron Maiden who toured everywhere. Right. And so it was with Kiss, and when I was in school. I can't remember. Did the album come out in '84?
Yeah, so Animalize was 84. Yeah,
yeah. So I would have been. I still have the vinyl I bought from here, the original from '84, and I think it was on TV. It was just something because I had an older cousin, and she was always doing these, putting these mixtapes together for me. 3 songs of from Michael Jackson's Thriller, and then a bit of Rainbow, and then a bit of Kiss, and all over the place. That's sort of like introduction because I didn't know anything about music.
Right.
My parents were listening to maybe the Rolling Stones and some Motown stuff.
Oh,
especially my dad. Yeah, he loves that kind of stuff. So music was completely new to me when I was 8, and also that was the time when I was in school. So music is very tribal, as you know, when you're in school.
Certainly.
It's like we had there were the Twisted Sister fans and the Wasp fans and the Kiss fans and the Motley Crue fans, and none of them would get along, and all that stuff. I was trying to be the mediator because I loved all those bands. But yeah, it was my world. It's also funny that I got introduced to Kiss during the Unmasked era. So I knew about the Masked, the whole history of the band later on, like right after. But it was a weird band to fall in love with because they had so many different. So like it was like a chameleon like persona for a band. They had that I Was Made for Loving You thing going on, and at the same time they had the God of Thunder and then the whole Destroyer album, and very different sounding things that came from very different places.
Very much.
So it's still a fascinating band. I didn't see them on the last I'm not sure if it's the how many farewell tours there will be, but
exactly.
They just played Helsinki. It was supposedly really, really good. And it's been ages since I've seen them live, but yeah, it was a big deal, and I think somehow those after Animalize, when I got into the Masked era Kiss, the Gene Simmons look with his hold of the demon persona was just so awesome.
Yeah,
that I wanted to start to play bass guitar, and it was a big deal. It felt like that if you start play an instrument, you sort of like can maybe transform into this this surreal, over the top, supernatural character. And I think I'm still trying, but yeah. So they're hugely important. Kiss were at that time, as were Iron Maiden. I remember,
yes.
Drawing. I still have drawings. Me drawing Eddie.
Oh,
all
nice.
Sorts of different iterations of it. I think we all did back in the day, and yeah, it was that's the stuff. Everybody has artists that they grew up with, and Kiss especially. That was the first musical love, so to speak.
Sir, you are a gentleman and a scholar. It has been such an honor talking to you today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Okay, and I hope to see you in Toronto soon.
I surely hope so as well, man. Fingers crossed, I'll be there.
Yeah, and we'll keep you posted and let you know. So thank you for taking the time and all that.
Certainly so, Bill. Take care and all the best.
Okay, catch you later.
Take care, man.